Black mother forced away mid-birth. What unfolds will leave you speechless. Every mother dreams of the moment they'll hold their child for the first time. For Latasha Moore, this dream was her beacon, a light guiding her through long nights and endless struggles. She had planned every detail, poured her heart into creating a world where her baby boy would feel nothing but love. But sometimes, the cruelest storms come when you least expect them. What should have been the happiest day of Latasha's life took a turn no one could have imagined. She didn't know that within these walls, a moment of joy would be overshadowed by something far darker. A chilling reminder of a reality she had hoped to shield her child from. But what happened next, what they did to her, will leave you questioning everything. And yet, buried within this darkness, a spark of hope would rise, a reminder of the strength it takes to stand against injustice. This is Latasha's story. Latasha clutched her belly, breathing through the pain as she entered the hospital. Her steps were slow, every contraction making her legs feel like they would buckle beneath her. She approached the check-in desk, her hands trembling as she handed over her ID and insurance card. The receptionist barely looked up, tapping a pen against the desk impatiently. "Fill these out," the receptionist said, sliding a clipboard toward her without a glance. Latasha hesitated, her hands shaking as another wave of pain hit. "I'm in labor. It's getting closer. Please, can someone—" "Fill them out and take a seat," the receptionist repeated, her tone clipped, eyes fixed on her computer screen. Latasha's heart sank. She shuffled to a chair, biting her lip to keep from crying out as another contraction gripped her. She glanced around the waiting room, searching for any sign of urgency or compassion, but the nurses and doctors walked past her without a second look. Her fingers fumbled with the pen as she tried to focus on the form through the haze of pain. She finished as quickly as she could and brought the clipboard back to the desk, her voice shaking. "I filled it out. Can I see someone now? Please, I think it's getting close." The receptionist sighed, barely glancing at the forms before muttering, "Take a seat. Someone will call you when they're ready." Latasha returned to her chair, gripping the armrest tightly as the pain intensified. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours. She could feel the baby moving, the contractions coming faster, harder. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps, and tears welled in her eyes. Finally, her name was called. She struggled to her feet, her legs trembling as she followed the nurse down a long hallway. The nurse didn't speak, didn't offer any reassurance, her steps brisk as Latasha struggled to keep up. They arrived at a small room, and the nurse gestured for her to get onto the bed. Latasha winced as she climbed up, her body protesting every movement. "Is the doctor coming? I think I'm getting close." The nurse attached a monitor to Latasha's belly, her movements mechanical and detached. "The doctor will be here when they can," she said flatly. "Just lie back and wait." "But the pain—" Latasha started, her voice breaking. The nurse cut her off. "You're fine for now. The doctor will check on you when they're available." Latasha stared at the ceiling, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She tried to breathe through the pain to steady herself, but the cold indifference around her made every moment heavier. She turned her head toward the nurse, who was jotting notes on a chart without even looking at her. "Please," Latasha whispered, her voice barely audible. "Can someone stay with me? I'm scared." The nurse didn't respond. She finished her notes and walked out, leaving Latasha alone in the quiet room, the sound of the monitor beeping the only noise. Latasha closed her eyes, trying to block out the overwhelming sense of helplessness that was taking over. Her thoughts spiraled as the minutes dragged on. She thought of the articles she had read about black mothers receiving substandard care, about the statistics she had tried to ignore. Her chest tightened as the reality set in. She wasn't just another patient to them. She was invisible, her pain dismissed, her fears unacknowledged. The door opened and a doctor entered, glancing briefly at her chart before speaking. "We're monitoring your progress. I'll check back in a few hours." "A few hours?" Latasha asked, her voice shaking. "I don't think I can wait that long. I think—" "You're fine for now," the doctor interrupted, already turning to leave. "Let us know if anything changes." Latasha stared after him, disbelief washing over her. The door clicked shut, and the room felt colder, emptier. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as she tried to hold back the sobs threatening to escape. Her phone buzzed in her hand, a text from her mother popping up on the screen. "You're strong, baby. You've got this." Latasha closed her eyes, holding onto those words like a lifeline. But deep down, she couldn't shake the growing fear that she was entirely alone in a system that didn't care if she lived or died. The contractions came harder and she bit down on her lip, praying for strength, praying for someone, anyone, to see her. The door to Latasha's room opened abruptly and a nurse stepped inside, her expression tight and unreadable. She glanced at Latasha for only a moment before pulling the curtain around the bed without a word. Latasha tried to sit up, grimacing as another contraction gripped her. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice strained. The nurse didn't answer immediately. She began detaching the monitors from Latasha's body, her movements hurried and detached. "We need to move you," she said finally. "Move me?" Latasha asked, confusion and alarm rising in her voice. "Why? What's going on?" The nurse avoided her eyes. "This room is needed for another patient. You'll be relocated." Latasha's heart pounded as the words sank in. "I am in labor," she said, her voice shaking. "I can't just move. Please, I'm in so much pain. I don't think it's safe." "It's not up to me," the nurse interrupted, her tone clipped. "I'm just following orders." Latasha felt a surge of panic. What kind of orders? Who's making these decisions? I need to talk to someone. The nurse didn't respond. She stepped out of the room briefly, leaving Latasha alone with her fears. The sounds of muffled voices drifted in from the hallway. "Why is she still in there?" a voice asked. "She's being moved," another replied. "The new patient's VIP. We need to prep the room now." Latasha strained to hear, her heart sinking with every word. VIP. They were moving her to make space for someone else, someone they deemed more important. The implications hit her like a blow to the chest. The nurse returned with two others, a wheelchair in tow. "Let's get you situated," she said briskly. Latasha shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "I can't move right now. Please, I'm in active labor. Can't you see that?" "Ma'am, we need you to cooperate," one of the other nurses said, her tone firmer. "This isn't up for discussion." Latasha's voice rose, tinged with desperation. "What if something happens to my baby? What if something happens to me? Don't you care?" The nurses didn't answer. Together, they helped her into the wheelchair, ignoring her cries of pain. Latasha's tears streamed freely now as they wheeled her down the hallway, the fluorescent lights above blurring through her watery gaze. She was pushed into a small, dimly lit room that barely resembled a medical space. Boxes were stacked in one corner, and a metal shelving unit held extra medical supplies. The nurses positioned her bed in the cramped space and left without another word, the door closing with a hollow thud behind them. Latasha stared around the room, disbelief washing over her. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. She reached for her phone, her hands shaking as she scrolled to her doula's number. Her fingers fumbled, and it took her 2 tries before she managed to hit the call button. The line rang once, twice, and then Anita's voice came through, calm but concerned. "Latasha? What's wrong?" "They moved me," Latasha said, her voice breaking. "They put me in some kind of storage room. I don't know what to do. I'm scared, Anita. I don't think I can do this." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Anita spoke, her voice firm and resolute. "I'm coming. Don't let them do anything else. I'll be there as soon as I can." Latasha clung to those words like a lifeline. She hung up and leaned back, tears slipping down her cheeks as she tried to focus on her breathing. Every contraction felt like it was pulling her apart, but the fear and isolation were worse. The weight of the situation pressed down on her, heavy and suffocating. She closed her eyes, whispering to herself, "Just hold on. Just hold on for him." The sounds of muffled laughter and casual conversation filtered in from the hallway, a cruel reminder of how little her life seemed to matter to those on the other side of the door. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the strength of her baby's movements. It was the only thing grounding her in that moment, the only thing keeping her from falling apart entirely. Latasha didn't know how much more she could take. The pain, the fear, the overwhelming sense of abandonment. It was all too much. But she had no choice. She had to keep going, for her baby, for herself, and for the hope that somehow someone would finally see her. Latasha gripped the edges of the makeshift bed in the cramped storage room, her breaths coming in shallow, ragged gasps. The pain was unrelenting now, waves of contractions crashing over her, leaving her weak and trembling. She kept glancing at the door, half expecting someone to burst in and tell her it was all a mistake, that help was on the way. But no one came. Her phone buzzed next to her, and she reached for it with trembling hands. It was a text from Anita. "Almost there. Stay strong. I've got you." Anita's words gave Latasha a flicker of hope, but it wasn't enough to quell the fear that had taken root deep inside her. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby shift inside her. "Just a little longer," she whispered, though the words felt hollow. The room was stifling, the air thick and suffocating. Latasha fought the urge to cry out, knowing no one would hear her, or care if they did. Minutes felt like hours as she sat there, the world outside her small, claustrophobic space continuing as if she didn't exist. The door finally swung open, and Latasha's heart leapt. But it wasn't Anita. It was the same nurse who had moved her, her expression unreadable. "You're still here?" the nurse muttered almost to herself. Latasha forced herself to sit up. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "I need help. My contractions are so close. Something doesn't feel right." The nurse didn't respond immediately. She fiddled with a clipboard, her eyes darting anywhere but at Latasha. "The doctor will be in when they can," she said, her tone flat. Latasha felt her frustration boil over. "I don't think you understand," she snapped, tears streaming down her face. "I am in labor right now. If you don't help me, I don't know what's going to happen. Do you even care?" The nurse hesitated, her eyes flickering with something that almost looked like guilt. but she quickly buried it. "I'll see what I can do," she mumbled before leaving again. As the door closed, Latasha felt the last thread of her patience snap. She grabbed her phone and called Anita again. The line barely rang before Anita answered. "Latasha, I'm here," Anita said, her voice firm. "Where are you?" Latasha's voice cracked. "They moved me to a storage room. I don't even think they're planning to come back." There was a brief pause, and then Anita's voice hardened. "Stay right where you are. I'm coming in." Latasha didn't know what Anita could do, but she clung to her words like a lifeline. She waited, every contraction pulling a cry from her lips, the pain becoming unbearable. Moments later, she heard a commotion outside. Raised voices. Anita's voice. The door burst open, and there she was. Anita, her face a mixture of fury and determination. Behind her, a flustered nurse was trying to explain something, but Anita cut her off. "She is in active labor, and you dumped her in a storage room." Anita's voice was sharp and commanding, filling the small space. "Do you have any idea how dangerous this is?" The nurse stammered, but Anita didn't wait for an answer. She turned to Latasha, her expression softening. "I'm here now," she said, taking Latasha's hand. "You're not alone anymore." Latasha's sobs broke free, a mix of relief and exhaustion. "Thank you," she whispered. Anita turned back to the nurse, her voice like steel. "Get the attending physician, now. If you don't, I will have every reporter in this city on your doorstep before the end of the hour." The nurse hesitated for a moment, her face pale, before hurrying out of the room. Anita knelt beside Latasha, wiping the sweat from her brow and helping her adjust on the bed. "You're going to be okay," Anita said firmly. "I won't let anything happen to you or your baby." Within minutes, the doctor appeared, looking frazzled and defensive. "What's the issue here?" he asked, his tone clipped. "The issue?" Anita said, standing up to face him. "The issue is that this woman has been ignored, dismissed, and mistreated while in labor. She needs proper medical attention right now." The doctor opened his mouth to respond, but the fire in Anita's eyes stopped him. He sighed and turned to Latasha, finally acknowledging her for the first time. "Let's take a look," he said, moving to check her progress. Latasha squeezed Anita's hand, her body shaking with the effort to hold on. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, someone was paying attention. Someone was taking her seriously. As the doctor examined her, his expression shifted. "She's fully dilated," he said, his voice tinged with urgency. "We need to move her to a proper delivery room immediately." Anita shot him a look. "You think?" Latasha was quickly wheeled out of the storage room and into a real labor and delivery room. The sterile white walls and bright lights should have felt cold, but to Latasha, they were a welcome change from the dark, suffocating space she had been trapped in. Nurses buzzed around her now, preparing for the delivery, their demeanor suddenly professional and efficient. Anita stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, whispering words of encouragement. "You're almost there, Latasha," she said. "You've got this." The pain was overwhelming, but Latasha held on. She focused on Anita's voice, on the promise that her baby was almost here. She gritted her teeth, pushed through the agony, and finally, after what felt like a lifetime, the sound of a baby's cry filled the room. Latasha's tears flowed freely as they placed her son on her chest. She cradled him close, her heart swelling with a mix of love and relief. She looked up at Anita, who was smiling through her own tears. "You did it," Anita said softly. You're incredible." Latasha kissed the top of her baby's head, the warmth of him grounding her. For the first time that day, she felt safe. She felt seen. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. The hospital room was finally quiet, the chaotic flurry of nurses and doctors fading into the background as Latasha cradled her newborn son in her arms. His tiny cries had softened, replaced by the gentle rhythm of his breathing. She traced the curve of his cheek with her finger, her heart swelling with both love and exhaustion. This was her moment, one she had fought so hard to reach, but the weight of everything she had endured still lingered, heavy and unresolved. Anita sat beside her, her presence a steady anchor. "He's perfect," she said softly, brushing a tear from her own cheek. Latasha nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was so scared that we wouldn't make it, that they wouldn't let us make it." The words hung in the air, raw and unspoken truths that neither woman needed to elaborate on. Anita reached out and placed a hand on Latasha's shoulder, her grip firm and reassuring. "You made it because you're stronger than all of them combined, but this isn't over, Latasha. What they did to you can't go unanswered." Before Latasha could respond, the door opened and Dr. Emily Parker stepped inside. She was young, her face etched with an expression of discomfort and something else, determination. Latasha recognized her as one of the doctors she'd glimpsed earlier, though they had barely exchanged a word. "Ms. Moore?" Dr. Parker began hesitantly, her hands clasped in front of her. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Latasha's grip on her baby tightened instinctively. Anita stood, her protective instincts flaring. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone wary. Dr. Parker held up her hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not here to excuse what happened," she said quickly. "I'm here to help, if you'll let me." Latasha studied her for a long moment, unsure of whether to trust her. The memory of being wheeled into the storage room, of being ignored and dismissed, was still fresh and raw. But there was something in Dr. Parker's eyes, an earnestness that felt different from the cold indifference she had faced all day. "Why now?" Latasha asked quietly. "Why are you here now, after everything?" Dr. Parker took a deep breath, stepping closer. "Because I saw what they did to you, and it was wrong," she said, her voice steady. "I didn't have the courage to speak up in the moment, and for that, I'm sorry. But I'm here now, and I want to make this right." Anita crossed her arms, her gaze sharp. "And how exactly do you plan to do that? Words aren't enough. This system is broken, and Latasha paid the price for it today." Dr. Parker nodded, her expression resolute. "You're absolutely right. The system is broken, and it's been broken for a long time. That's why I've already reported the incident to hospital administration. I've also started documenting everything, every decision, every conversation. I'm going to make sure this doesn't get swept under the rug." Latasha blinked, her exhaustion momentarily giving way to surprise. "You reported it? Why would you do that? Won't you get in trouble?" Dr. Parker hesitated for a moment before answering. "Because it's the right thing to do. And because I took an oath to care for my patients, all of my patients, regardless of who they are or where they come from. What happened to you wasn't just negligence. It was discrimination. And I can't stand by and let that go unchallenged." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Latasha looked down at her son, his tiny fingers curled around hers. She thought of everything she had endured that day, of the fear and pain and indignity. And for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, her story could lead to something bigger than herself. Anita broke the silence, her voice softer now. If you're serious about this, then you need to be ready for pushback. They'll try to discredit you, silence you. Dr. Parker straightened her shoulders. I know, but I've already started reaching out to colleagues who feel the same way I do. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it has to start somewhere. Latasha's lips trembled as she tried to form the words. Thank you, she finally whispered, for seeing me, for helping me. Dr. Parker gave a small nod, her gaze steady. It's the least I can do. And if you're willing, I'd like to help you share your story. People need to hear what happened here. Anita stepped closer to Latasha, her voice firm but encouraging. Your story matters, Latasha. It's not just about what happened to you. It's about every black mother who's been ignored, dismissed, or worse. You can make a difference. Latasha looked between the two women, the weight of their words settling on her shoulders. She thought of her son, of the world he was being born into, and a quiet determination began to build within her. Okay, she said softly, her voice growing stronger. Let's do it. Dr. Parker smiled, a hint of relief in her expression. We'll take this one step at a time, but I promise you, I'm in this with you. Anita squeezed Latasha's shoulder, her pride evident. You're not alone in this, Latasha. We'll fight this together. As the conversation continued, plans began to take shape. Latasha felt a sense of empowerment she hadn't felt all day. Her voice, once silenced, was beginning to find its strength again. She looked down at her son, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. And she knew that this fight wasn't just for her. It was for him, for their future, for every mother who had ever been made to feel invisible. And for the first time, Latasha allowed herself to believe that change was possible. Weeks had passed since the day Latasha's life changed forever. The bruises left by the experience, emotional and physical, had not completely faded, but neither had her resolve. What began as a day of pain and indignity had blossomed into something far more powerful, a movement. Latasha sat in her living room, cradling her baby boy, Justice, in her arms. Around her, family and friends gathered, their faces lit with pride and determination. Anita stood at the front of the room, a clipboard in hand, detailing the plans for the next rally. Dr. Parker was there too, no longer the hesitant figure who had first stepped into Latasha's hospital room, but now an outspoken ally, fighting alongside them. Latasha, Anita said, drawing the room's attention. Do you want to say something? Latasha hesitated, her eyes scanning the room. The weight of so many eyes on her was both intimidating and empowering. She shifted Justice in her arms, feeling his tiny fingers grasp at her shirt, and she took a deep breath. I didn't think I'd be here, she began, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. When I was lying in that hospital, scared and alone, I thought that was it. I thought no one cared, that my story would end there, unnoticed and unheard. But because of all of you, because of Anita, Dr. Parker, and every single person who stood by me, I'm here. Justice is here. And we're not going to let what happened to us happen to anyone else. Applause erupted in the room, a wave of support that brought tears to Latasha's eyes. She continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. This isn't just my fight. It's our fight. Black mothers deserve better. Black lives deserve better. And if we stand together, if we keep pushing, we can make sure no one ever has to feel the way I felt that day." Dr. Parker stepped forward, her clipboard in hand. "We've already made progress," she said. "The hospital has launched an internal review, and several staff members are undergoing bias training. But that's just the beginning. We need systemic change, not just in this hospital, but in every hospital." The crowd nodded in agreement, their energy palpable. Anita raised her voice, rallying them further. "This is about more than one hospital or one story. It's about a pattern that's gone on for far too long. But change doesn't come from silence. It comes from voices like Latasha's, from people like all of you who refuse to accept the status quo." Latasha looked down at Justice, his tiny face peaceful in her arms, and she felt a surge of hope. "I want him to grow up in a world where his mother's life and his life are valued," she said. "And I believe we can make that world together." The group spent hours planning the next steps. They organized fundraisers for maternal health advocacy groups, planned a social media campaign, and brainstormed ways to involve more people in their cause. By the end of the evening, Latasha felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. The next day, Latasha sat at her kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. She opened the video Anita had helped her record, a raw, emotional account of her experience. In it, Latasha spoke directly to the camera, holding Justice in her arms. "This is my story," she said in the video, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "It's not unique, and that's the problem. Too many black women face discrimination and neglect when they need help the most. It's time to change that. I'm sharing my story because I want to make sure it never happens to anyone else. But I can't do it alone. I need you, your voice, your support, your commitment to standing up for what's right." She hit post, watching as the video went live. Within minutes, comments and shares began flooding in. Messages of support, stories from other women, and commitments to join the cause filled her screen. The outpouring of love and solidarity was overwhelming. By the end of the day, the video had been viewed thousands of times. People were sharing it with hashtags like Justice for Mothers and Black Maternal Health. Advocacy groups reached out to Latasha, offering to amplify her message. The ripple effect was undeniable. Weeks later, the first rally took place. Hundreds of people gathered, holding signs that read, "Every Mother Matters" and "Black Lives in Labor Too." Latasha stood at the front, Justice strapped to her chest as she spoke to the crowd. "I never thought my voice could make a difference," she said, her voice amplified by the microphone. "But today, I see that it can, and so can yours. Together, we're unstoppable. Together, we can demand the respect, the care, and the humanity that every mother deserves." The crowd cheered, their energy electrifying. People hugged, chanted, and connected, creating a powerful sense of community. For Latasha, it was more than just a rally. It was a declaration of hope. As the sun set, Latasha stood with Anita and Dr. Parker, watching as people continued to talk and organize. She felt a deep sense of gratitude and determination. This was only the beginning. To everyone watching, we need you to be part of this movement. Share this story. Talk about it. Advocate for change in your own communities. Subscribe to this channel for updates on how you can help us fight for justice and equality. Together, we can make sure that every mother, every life is valued. Because when we stand together, We can change the world.